Guys, you have the illustrious career to be able to wrestle against the living legend Bruno, or former living legend Bruno Sammartino, and Hulk Hogan, who arguably could be the greatest wrestler of all time. Your opinion?
In what capacity?
How about the greatest draw of all time?
Now you're talking.
Okay.
Now you're talking.
Again, when I look at a wrestler, I look at it's not necessarily has to be the greatest wrestler. You know, they have to have all the tools, right? Good mic skills,
right?
Have a good look, right?
Right.
You know, can wrestle, right? Doesn't necessarily have to be the best wrestler of all time.
Bit,
yeah.
Serviceable.
So
give us something.
You know, for me, Hulk. I grew up on Hulk Hogan, I guess, and not grew up on it, but to me, he is probably one at least in the top 3 greatest. But can you compare the two?
Bruno and Hogan.
Yeah. Well, I saw Hulk about a year ago on some talk show, and somebody asked him who the greatest performer was in wrestling. He says, "Oh, without a doubt, Ric Flair."
I disagree, by the way.
Okay, now
I'm kind of with him as far as the whole package.
Yeah, now
you
can't really pick one. You got to take a 5.
It's tough,
and then 10. Maybe 10 would be
right
better suited.
Yes. The next thing you know, you have 20. But go on.
Yeah, because like Hulk had the big foot, bounce off the rope, and the big leg.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And what else?
Oh, you forgot the other well-rounded part of the arsenal, the 3 punches. You.
But
you
only need 3.
At the time, that's all that was needed.
The fans they loved it.
Again, Minnesota guy, AWA, different than a WWF person that grows up on this type of wrestling. With all due respect, huge Bruno fan. Bruno, I didn't think was a great wrestler either, and he didn't have very good mic skills, in my opinion.
Nobody thought he was a good wrestler.
No,
really,
but he was hot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'll tell you a funny story. We're at the TV studio in Minneapolis, and Vern starts. There's about 50 of us in there, and we're getting ready for some big anniversary deal. So we have Hulk and Mad Dog Vachon, the Giant. Nick Bockwinkel, Ray the Crippler Stevens. I mean, shit, everybody was there. Me and Jerry Blackwell. I mean, everybody was there in the studio. So Vern started fucking around with Hulk. Now, Hulk's 6'5". At that time, he probably weighed 300. And Vern is like 5'10", 58 years of age, not in the best shape.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was all right for going to the tennis court, because that's where he trained, on the tennis court.
Right.
And so he tries to leg dive Hulk. Well, let's say here's Hulk and here's Vern. So Vern tries to leg dive Hulk. Hulk just collapses on top of him and hooks him around the waist. Vern's on face down on the floor, the concrete floor of the TV studio, and all you see is 2 hands and 2 feet sticking out.
Yeah,
you know,
he's been enveloped.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but I mean, professional wrestling is not a tough man sport, right? It's an entertainment. Look, great athletes, Olympic weightlifters.
There's a lot of tough people.
I get that, but it's not meant to be like who's the toughest, right? It's about entertaining, and that's my point.
Yeah.
Was Sammartino, who, in your opinion, who was the better draw, Sammartino or Hogan?
Oh, Hogan.
Logical.
But in the beginning, when it was more ethnic, more Italians and Greeks in the northeast here, well, Bruno, shit, you couldn't beat Bruno.
Right.
I mean, every spaghetti vendor in town
When did you get more butterfly? Like, because you wrestled in the Garden against Sammartino,
Oh,
sold
I had
out.
butterflies. Oh,
Did you have more butterflies wrestling Hogan in those crowds, or
No.
the Sammartino crowds?
no, Sammartino.
Yeah.
Because I was in awe
Yeah.
of Bruno. You know, I'd only been, I was right out of the Olympics in '72, and here I'm in, 5 years later, I'm in Madison Square Garden wrestling Bruno in the main event. And he was a big Ken Patera fan. He watched all my weightlifting in the national championships, the Pan American Games where I won 4 gold medals, the Olympic Games. And shit, he even knew about my shot putting career when I was at Brigham Young University. And when I came into wrestling, all the wrestlers knew who I was. And of course, I don't realize that. You know, I'm just another amateur athlete. You know, just another stiff.
Oh.
You know,
I'm not gonna say
I'm
that.
just curious. Compare, since you did work with the great Bruno Sammartino, what was his strength level? To me, he's natural strength. Look at
Yeah.
him, man.
Yeah.
Later on, we saw a lot of Rick Rudes and Macho Mans, and the steroid look and the bicycle pump in the arm.
Can I just add on that?
Yeah,
'Cause
sure.
This is that's a great question.
Okay.
Ken, can I assume that you took steroids at some point or another?
yeah.
Okay.
But
So he was
I hated needles and I hated pills.
understood.
Okay.
So my partner brings up a great point. Sammartino obviously hated steroids, and you, great Olympic champion that you were, he had to have known you were on steroids, right?
I hated steroids,
But
but
he
I
knew
knew
you-
I had to take some.
Were you ever
Right.
pressured to take
Yeah.
steroid? You were pressured. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sammartino ever
that-
talk to you about that at all? Be
Yeah,
like,
I talked to Bruno about it.
Try to
was-
discourage you from taking roids, or
No, this is way after
Okay,
the Olympics.
okay.
You know,
Okay.
This is from '72
Okay.
to when I first met Bruno in '76.
how was his strength level, though? Getting back to my question, compared to
Well,
some
I-
of these amazing specimens we saw later with
Yeah, not really, because he was past his prime and he wasn't lifting heavy weights anymore when
Okay.
I wrestled him.
Okay.
So body
the same.
strength. But yeah, you know you're in the ring with somebody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about guys back in those days who could compare to your strength? Your strength is legendary. How about a guy like
Yeah.
Tony Atlas? Was there anyone else you ever got in the ring with and said, "Wow, this guy's actually as strong as me,"
Well,
or
there-
close, or close?
Well, there again, Tony had more arm strength than leg strength.
Okay.
Seriously.
Okay.
Yeah, he bench
Okay.
pressed almost 600 pounds. He couldn't
Right.
squat 600 pounds.
Right.
I think Tony said he benched 651.
Something-
He broke
something insane.
Sammartino's record or something when he was
Something
in the
insane.
studio.
Yeah.
He
That's what he
could've.
said. Yeah.
What about Bravo, Dino Bravo?
I will be riding high. Yes, I will be.